I just thought I'd document my DSL1 JCM800 conversion. So I've done some modifications to the amplifier to make it sound more like a JCM800. Changed like the negative feedback and a couple of resistance values off of V1 and V2. So I've reduced the overall gain of the amplifier so it's a bit more manageable, and also made it less compressed. There was a horrendous mid scoop on it originally, so I've tried to boost the mids of it. Where I've got it to now is quite good, but it's lacking low end. I think that's just like the nature of the amplifier really, but I will continue to like plug away at it and see if I can improve it further. So what I've got currently is I'm going to set all the controls to middle of the road, 12 o'clock. I'll keep the volume on 10, and I've got the gain on about 8. Quick note about the signal chain. So I've got my Epiphone Les Paul with Alnico 2 pickups in it, so Slash inspired guitar. That's going direct into an SD1, which is off currently, and then that's going into the Marshall DSL1 JCM800, direct into an isolation cabinet that I've got, which has got a Celestion Greenback 25 watt speaker in it. I'm micing that up with a Shure SM57. I haven't got a grill cloth on the front of it, so the capsule of the SM57 is like in the speaker a little bit, so it'll be a little bit less low end, a little bit brighter sounding. That's going direct into the Focusrite 2i2, and then that's going straight into Logic from there. So that's what you're hearing on this. So I'm just going to play some stuff around with tone controls at noon and the gain around 8, volume at 10. Sounds quite like really early JCM800 stuff, like Appetite for Destruction, that kind of stuff. Especially if I turn up the treble to around 8 and set the middle to about 7. Gets that JCM800 kind of thing, but like unboosted. So if I leave those settings on, what I had before, and chuck the SD1 in front of it. Now the SD1 I've got the level set to 10 and the drive set to about 2, and then the tones straight in the middle. It gets to the realm of like early Aussie stuff. Chuck the SD1 in front of it. Alright, that's all the tones that I got for it, without adding like reverb and stuff. It does kind of like a bluesy type of thing. So if we back the gain off to like 4, I'll keep the bass, middle and treble where it was before. Maybe a little bit less gain. There's quite a nice light breakup as well. Alright, I'm going to jump over to the schematic and I'll show you the inner workings of the PCB and what's going on. Obviously, like a bit of housekeeping first of all. If you're going to go inside an amplifier, they run at a really high voltage and there is the potential to really hurt yourself, if not kill yourself with it. So I highly advise, if you don't know what you're doing, get someone that does know what they're doing to do the modifications for you, if that's the route you want to go down. Or at the very least, just read up on stuff so you know what's going on. I'm not liable and I can't watch over everyone that's doing these modifications, so just make sure you're safe when you're doing it. The main thing to watch out for is like filter caps and stuff like that. There's loads of information about how to discharge them. I won't go through that. But yeah, if you're ever gonna have your hands inside an amplifier as well, just like make sure that it's you've got one hand in your pocket and you've only ever got one hand inside an amplifier. Obviously never probe around in it when it's on and live. Make sure it's all switched off, caps are discharged, and there's no potential harmful voltage in there. Alright, see you in a second. I don't know if that picked up. Alright, here we are with the PCB in front of us. I picked this up around 2019. The ones that I've seen online, some of the PCBs are a little bit different. So they've made some changes on them for one reason or another, different revisions. So yeah, 2019 PCB. I've taken my mod information and done my research on the DSL1, and the references that I'm using for this, head first amplification. The guy Jason there, he did an amazing video on modifying one of the JCM800 DSL version heads, and quite a lot of the information from here is taken from him. I've also looked at the Joey Mods thread on Marshall forum, and the information there is absolutely amazing. If you're looking at modifying one of these, I highly recommend checking those two guys out. Also, Rob Robinette, his website has really helped for like the tone stack information on the JCM800, and there's just a wealth of amp building knowledge in there, so highly recommend checking those guys out too. Right, as you can see, there's quite a lot of stuff going on here. So all the resistors that I've changed in here, I've tried to keep them at 1 watt. Just good to use 1 watt in an amplifier if it doesn't specify a size. Obviously if it's anything power rated, then you're going to need a bigger wattage size resistor. So I've made some notes on the modifications that I've done up here. So first of all, my main goal was trying to reduce the amount of gain in the amplifier. So whilst I ordered this guy here, an ECC81. It's got the same pin out as an ECC83, but there's about 30% less gain in it, so that will help to reduce the gain that's in there. After watching the video with Jason at Head First Amplification, he mentioned that the capacitors that we've got going from one gain stage to another, that produces quite a lot of the woolliness and the woofiness that you get from the amp. So what I did there is just change the values out. So I ended up going with 2N2 in those, and I've changed C5, C6 and C8. So in my amplifier here, that's C6 just there. I believe this guy down here is C5, just in there. And then that one right there is C8. So reduce those values, and that helped to get rid of that woolliness that you get at higher gain, which really helped to tighten up the amplifier overall. I changed a section here going into to pin 1, so the anode of V1, so a dual triode ECC83. So this is the anode section of it. What I did here is I removed C15, and I just put C15 over R3, which you can see just in there. So C15's been removed, and that has taken place over R3. Just a bit of filtering, really. I kept the cathode resistor here the same, but I added a 1 UF electrolytic capacitor on C21, which is just in there. Obviously making note of where the negative lead is going to, and just buzzing out the orientation of that, so you make sure that you don't get the electrolytic in the wrong way. So moving on to the next stage, which is here. I popped this 1 meg to ground off the gain pot. Someone mentioned on a forum that helps to reduce the gain a bit. I didn't notice too much of it, but I noticed that there was a bit of a different sweep from the pot. Some of the high-end frequencies were a bit different, so I kept that 1 meg in there, and that is just down at the back here, just coming off of R21 and then going to ground. So this is the main bit here that started to make the difference with the modifications. So this is the cathode section, the second stage of V1. So I changed that from a 2K2 to a 2K7, 2.7K, whichever you want to call it. So I started to reference the JCM800 stuff at this stage to try and shape the tone a bit better. So I changed that, the cathode side here on V1, second section, and then V2 I changed that to 10K from 8K2 with 500 picofarad cap over there for a little bit of frequency filtering. In the Joey Mods forum, he mentions this section here, so I think it was a different value that he was referencing to the larger heads, but this being the 1 watt version, I had to try and decipher what sections were what in here. So R29 is what I ended up using, and I stuck a resistor in parallel to lower this value here. So I ended up popping a 1 meg in there, and it says in the forum that this value here is done to taste, and it's anything from like 220k, I think he mentions, up to about 1 meg that you can pop in there. That helps to reduce the amount of overall gain as well, so that was a good modification there. And then if we move over to this next section here, the switch the tone shift switch. I've never been a massive fan of them on the DSL amps. I've had the DSL50 head, I've got the DSL1 now, and I've also got a DSL401, and the 401 doesn't have the tone shift on it, but the DSL1 and the DSL50 that I owned have, and I don't like that mid scoop that they put on the DSL1. It's really fizzy, really mid scooped, and for me it just doesn't really work. I'm a massive fan of the older JCM800, so that's the sort of thing that I go for. So what I did here was I basically just removed everything around this switch and popped a 500 picofarad capacitor in there, and then I changed these tone stacks to the tone stack of a JCM800. To me it just sounded right when I changed them over, so I mean, this is something that you don't have to do. You can play around with these values, but basically change the two capacitors here just to change the tone stack. So 500 picofarad that I popped in, I ended up taking off the two caps that sit here, C12 and C14, and then popped it here between those two back legs, because those up there are essentially linked for the switch. So I removed those so I knew that it was just 500 picofarad and there wasn't another cap sat in line with it, skewing the value that's going in there. This little bundle of joy here, these two bundles of joy, they are what I did to get the JCM800 tone stack. So that's for the bass and middle of that section there. The last thing that I did is the negative feedback resistor R17 on this one. Originally I believe it was 47k. So after doing all this modification, it was still lacking that mid-end grunt that I really wanted. Mid-range grunt I really wanted out of the amp. So that, coupled with still a bit too much gain, making it a bit woofy. I wanted to get it so, like where you set a JCM800, you set it around 7 o'clock and you get a nice amount of gain and compression, and then past there it starts to get a little too compressed and mushy. This one is okay up till 10 currently, but it's nice around 7. So I changed this for a JCM800 value in the negative feedback of 100k, and that made a massive difference to the sound of the amp. Now, if you're going to make these modifications to your amp and you're using the effects loop of the amp for something nice and clean, this does affect the overall output of your send and return in your effects loop of the DSL1. I was using a Synergy JCM800 module to reference the tones back and forth. That's how I know that the amp's not producing enough low end, but the amp still sounds great. I mean, in the recordings, there's no EQ or anything on them. That's just what it is. So it sits in the mix quite nicely. I tend to roll off quite a lot of the low end and really high end when I mix a track anyway. So to my ears, it sounds good anyway. Yeah, so if you're using the effect send and return like I was, the JCM800 module, you'll start to hear a little bit more of an overdriven sound. So I need to play around with the values of the EQ section and try and tune that back down a little bit, but that's really the only thing that I've noticed. I did pop a switch for, I removed C32 down here, early stages of me prototyping what I was doing here, and I popped a switch in there and I was playing around with values for the bright cap. Now this section only works on clean, so it was redundant modification, and I was going to add one in for the overdrive sound, but as soon as I played it, when you roll up the treble in the middle like all the way, it sounds lovely. So I was really happy with it, and I've just left it as it is. The tubes that I ended up using in the amplifier, so I went with in V1 Ariba tube 12X7 ECC83. And then this is my JJ Tubes ECC81, and then there's another JJ in there, ECC82. Yeah, I hope this information helps someone. Cheers checking out the video. I've got a load of other stuff that I've made and modified, so if there's any interest I'll upload that stuff. I've built a vintage Chennai Univibe, which I've got over there on the shelf, so I could do a video based around that. There was quite a lot of information I had to collate to get that thing to work in the testing phase. I've also redesigned and built the DoD 308 Yngwie Malmsteen pedal because I couldn't find any at the time, so I made one of those. I can do a video on that. I think there's an old video up on this channel of that, but the quality's not great, so I could do a bit of a talk around that. Also, if anyone's interested in those, I can do a small batch of them, so if you're interested in the DoD 308 grey spec DoD 250 essentially, the Yngwie Malmsteen stuff, then give me a shout. Yeah, cheers for checking out the video. See you later.